Hello dear students, welcome to English classes at Radhika Rinesh. Today we are going to learn the topic models of communication, which was in the paper Communication for Functional BA English Students. What is a model of communication? It is the simplified representations of the process of communication. That is, the communication process is represented in charts or in pictures. Most models try to describe both verbal and non-verbal communication and often understand it as an exchange of messages. We know that communication is a process of exchange of messages and noise will be there. Then the models are trying to describe both the verbal and non-verbal communications along with the exchange of messages. As we previously said, the components and their interactions are usually presented in the form of a diagram. A graphical representation of communication is available in the models. Some basic components and interactions reappear in many of the models. That is, sender, receiver, or the feedback, decode, encode. These elements are common in all kinds of models. They include the idea that a sender encodes information in the form of a message and sends it to receiver through a channel. We know that communication is a process of communication, that is sending a message from a sender who has already encoded it, and he is sending the message through a channel, and the message reaches to the auditory organs of the receiver, and there the receiver is decoding it. So this is the process of communication. After decoding the message, the duty of the receiver is to giving feedback. In both cases, noise may interfere and distort the message. We know that noise or barriers will be there, like noise, external voice will be there, or lack of eye contact or body language, or the that is the unfamiliarity in the case of language will be there if the receiver does not know the language in which the sender has sent the message, and there will occur a communicational barrier. We already studied all those barriers there. So all these barriers are represented or mentioned in the models. These models are trying to provide a simple explanation of the process by highlighting its most basic characteristics and components. So it is highlighting, it's actually a graphical representation, and it is highlighting the components by giving all the process involved in communication. Let's analyze linear transmission at first. Linear transmission is a kind of linear way or graphical representation of a message. Here the sender will be there, and the sender is encoding the message, and he is sending the message to the receiver through the channel. Okay. A channel is needed there, and the receiver is receiving the message and decoding it. There is no scope of feedback. Noise is there, external noise is there to barrier the communication. So this is the linear model of communication. Let's analyze the characteristics of linear model of communication. It describes communication as one-way process. That is, there is no feedback at all, and the receiver is not at all sending message to the sender. So there is no feedback, and it's a one-way process. That is, we know that in news channels or in television, the newsreader is reading the news and sending the message to the viewers. So it's a kind of one-way communication, and it's a linear kind of communication. The reception of the message is the end point of this process. There is no feedback at all. There is no feedback loop. Linear transmission models include Aristotle's, Laswell's, Shannon Weaver's, and Bellow's model. Some other persons like Aristotle, Laswell, Shannon Weaver, and Bellow, they are described, and they have said more about linear transmission models. Next is the transaction model, and let's analyze the picture. There will be a communicator, and he is sending the message to the receiver, and the receiver is also a communicator here. because he is always giving feedback or response to the speech or the things that is spoken by the communicator. Then co-creation of meaning. Meaning is also very important, and it is showed here in this picture, and the context, in which social context they are being interacting, physical and psychological context or cultural context, whether they are belonging to a particular tribe or particular class or something like that. That is these all things are being described. It should be described in this transaction model. And here the communicator, that is why the receiver is also indicated as the communicator. He is often communicating to the communicator or the sender. There is no sender and receiver. Both of them are complementary to the process of communication. Both of them are switching on their roles respectively. Next is the transaction model, and as the name suggests, feedback is also very important here. The transaction is being happen in this model. Understand sending the responding as simultaneous process. Responding is a simultaneous process in the process of communication, and while the speaker is sending the message and the receiver is decoding the message, the receiver should have to respond. Okay, so respond will be there, and it is there in the transaction model. Describe how listeners use nonverbal communication like body posture and facial expressions to give some form of feedback. Along with the feedback, the body language or the nonverbal cues of the receiver is also being expressed in this transaction model. Creates social realities like relationships, personal identities, and communities. As it is very much contextual based, we can understand the relationships. That is, this graphical representation shows us how close these persons are and what are the relationships between these persons and how they are working, and if whether they are friends or whether they are very close friends or whether they are enemies or like that. And on various levels such as their thoughts and feelings as well as their social identities are being disclosed through this transaction method. It gives emphasis on context, in which context the speaker is sending the message, whether it is an institutional or very formal method or whether it is an informal method. All these are being described or showed in the transaction model. Then a person who has glorified this transaction model was Barnlund. Hope you have understood the video on communication models, and here we have described only two models of communications. They are linear models and transaction models. So if you have any doubt, don't hesitate to ask me. Okay, bye bye. Thank you. Have a nice day.